Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. So today we have an awesome video. Not only is that weird light, that weird bright light back, that's actually the sun, believe it or not. That's the first time we've seen that in several weeks, but we are going to be looking at blooms and spikes today. This is a bloom and spike tour video. I think we're going to start in the tent and we're going to end up in the tank because I have two, not one but two, very, very special blooms to share with you once we get over there. Several flowers in here, lots and lots of stuff going on to look at, so let's get right into it. But thanks for watching, thanks for joining, and I do hope you enjoy this video. So first and foremost here, shrouded in mist, let me turn off this humidifier. We have our Speculinia picta var. Gigi, and this plant I have had for like 2 years. I got it from Equigenera. It came with no roots. I almost lost it twice. It has lived mounted for quite a while. It likes to stay pretty moist. Not quite as moist as a Dracula or Mazdavalia, but it does like to stay moist nonetheless. It is a pleurothallid. I kind of grow this one. I've started to grow this one just like I grow Panthes. I grew it far too shaded for far too long, and it never ever rewarded me with spikes. But as you can see right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 spikes forming on this plant, which is extremely exciting. I love these little blooms and I just cannot wait to see them. So hopefully not too much longer. I've never bloomed it. I don't know how long these spikes take to form, but they did pop up and have been growing really fast so far. So hopefully within the next couple weeks we'll be looking at these flowers instead of just spikes. More good news. I have a Tolumnia here. This is my only Tolumnia species that likes me enough to ever try to bloom, and that does bloom. And this is Tolumnia tetrapetala. And it's got 2 spikes on. This first one's got 1 bud, it looks like. But the second one up here, this larger spike, actually has 2 buds that are just starting to form. I am super excited about it. This plant's been in my collection now for 2 years as well, about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I got it, it bloomed shortly after I got it, and this is my first season actually blooming it all from scratch myself, so very exciting stuff. They have awesome flowers. I cannot wait to share these with you guys because I love my Tolumnias, and this is the only species, the only one that I can get to bloom at this point in time. I've got a couple others. I've got Tolumnia velutina down here that goes back and forth between being happy and not being happy. I've got Tolumnia Europhylla right here, which has almost died, and it's just starting to come into growth, so I think I might have saved this plant. Really happy about that. And then down there on this longer piece in the back, I've got Tolumnia Silvestre, also a non-bloomer, but this one does grow relatively well for me. And yeah, I'm hoping to get them all to bloom here in the near future, but so far the little tetrapetala here is the only one. Calokyla, this is one that's on my intro video. I think it's the first flower on my intro video. I got this from Louisiana Orchid Connection. I've been trying to kill it for a little over a year now, or almost a year now I guess. And it is just recovering. It's producing roots, about half of it died, and I have promptly changed its conditions. It still grows bright, has 0 moss anymore. None of my Tolumnias anymore are grown with moss, except for this guy on the stick. It came with moss. The minute this thing is done flowering, it is going to be taken off that stick and it's going to go on its own permanent home on a piece of cork. So that is that. Dropping down a little bit, we have got our Dendrobium Heligeanum. This plant is still pushing on. I haven't quite lost this back bud yet, if you can see it silhouetted right there, but I'm pretty sure it's in the process of blasting still. It's not really growing, and the other ones are starting to swell up, get a little bit of color, and I think they're going to be open before too long. I'm only going to have 2 on this plant this year if I'm lucky, just like last year, unfortunately. But once again, the minute that this thing is done blooming, it's going to get taken off of this cedar tile. I can't stand these things. And it's going to go on a piece of cork, and it's going to look really nice and have room to spread out and get all these roots in some media finally, and hopefully push on into a nice, strong, healthy plant for me. Let's see, a little bit more to the left in the mix here, you'll see all the things coming up. This is our Miltonia Thymatochila spike, and it is just going ape. It is huge. It's getting bigger by the day. Still no extra branches coming off of these branches yet, so I still think we have quite a ways to go, but that spike is here, and the plant is way down there. So this is going to be a really interesting scenario if I can keep these, like I've been saying. But yeah, that's my Miltonia Thymatochila spike. Still hanging in there. I haven't seemed to mess it all up yet, thankfully. Here we have Dendrobium Unicum. It is just starting to come into growth at the base. I don't know if you can see that green little nubbin right next to my finger here, to the right of my finger. But it is just starting to come back into growth. And if you come down this cane, you can see that our little flower spikes are starting to get pretty well developed. So we should have this plant in bloom here in the next month or so, hopefully, to look at. This is the first time bloomer for me, and I am absolutely thrilled. Super excited I got the rest right, and that we're able to see my first long cane resting type dendrobium blooms that I have managed to pull. The little Dendrobium Heligeanum over here, I do believe, is still also progressing quite nicely. This little green speck up here above my finger, I do believe is a bud forming on this back bulb here, and I think there might be one more somewhere in this region, but only time is going to tell. They're too small, I can't tell if they're growths yet or buds, but just the location that that one is coming out on that cane, I think that that one's going to be a potential, at least, for a bloom. Really exciting stuff. Cool little flowers. Zooming down, we have our Dyneema Polybulban. This is one of our plants that we're doing for the giveaway for you guys, and as you can see, it is strongly in bloom. It's got some sunlight this morning, so the fragrance coming off of this plant is just incredible. It really does have a nice sweet fragrance. It's a happy little plant, and it is just smothered in these little awesome orange, brownish orange and white blooms. The Dendrobium Heligeanum here, we're going to follow this down. These spikes are just continuing to impress with tons and tons and tons of blooms as you go down. More to come. They're not fully bloomed yet, as you can see, but these little flowers do pack quite a punch. They're both, oh god, if I don't tangle them all up, they're both very visibly attractive flowers, and they also have a really nice fragrance, especially in the sunlight. Really neat little blooms. The lip kind of wiggles a bit, but that is an awesome little dendrobium species that I'm still super thrilled to have in my collection. I have another dendrobium species here in bloom. We've looked at this plant several times. Oop, let me get around here. This is my Dendrobium Heligeanum, and as you can see, it is still going strong. Nina, I know you mentioned that you want one of these. You absolutely have to get one if you can get your hands on them. They're awesome little plants. It'll probably grow really well for you in your leca or semi-hydro setup, because they do love moisture, but they do love a lot of air. As you see, these roots tend to grow up the bark, but they also really do love to grow through the live moss that I do keep moist pretty much perpetually. I let it dry out slightly between waterings, but this is what you get with Heligeanum. Awesome little flowers. My plant's doing well. It's turning into a nice little hairy, weird little thing bush, which I love. And I'm hoping that next year, the year after, we really get a lot more blooms on this plant. Coming to the left a bit more, this is our Bulbaphyllum tentaculiferum. This is our Bulbaphyllum tentaculiferum, and I'm going to start to zoom out, and you guys are going to see it is covered in a bunch of spikes. Some of them are blasting. This is what happens to this plant. It gets to this time of year, and a lot of these little small ones don't make it. But I do have a couple, especially this one down here, that looks like it still has a shot. So we might see a few more blooms on this little plant, but I'm not holding my breath. It really doesn't like it once it starts to get warm. This is actually a true cool growing bulbaphyllum, so a little bit of an oddball. It's going to go live in the tank very soon. That's where it spends its spring, summer, and fall, and it'll come back in here next winter or next fall once the temps get lower, and we can hopefully ensure another really good season, because I think that was the ticket. It's never ever thrown up this many bloom spikes before, and it's never acted like it was actually going to open so many of them before. It really does appreciate a nice cool off, and that's what we're going to give it again. Coming out to the next plant, we have our beautiful Ionopsis Utricularities, and I don't know if the camera does this justice or not. It looked okay a few times when I've taken video of this, but I mean, that is just an awesome spectacle for blooms. That spike is just fully opening. This longer spike here, the little shorter spike here has 1 or 2 buds there at the end, and the original spike back here actually has its first flower starting to fade finally. But this is going to be in bloom for a little while longer, thankfully. This thing opened like a month ago, started, and it has just continued to impress. They successively open from the back, so these blooms will be the first to go, but they just open, and cascade down. Really beautiful little flowers, and an otherwise really neat little plant. This is another one. It's really close to coming off this piece of cedar, and it's going to go on a nice piece of cork bark and be able to live happy long term. Really neat little plant, and even neater blooms. Alright, let's head over to the tank. So we're here now in the tank, and as usual, there's an absolute smorgasbord of blooms. Starting here with this Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii red. Still have 2 flowers on, doing really nicely, and we have another bud forming up here on this cane. So hopefully a 3rd flower in about a month's time, I guess. Usually it takes about that long for them to form. And more red. I love red, so I do have plans to get more of these. From a recommendation from Michael McCarthy, I now have a spot to get them, so extremely exciting, and I should have more in the near future. The Dendrobium Gaetan Minnette, I've actually got the name right this time. This is the Aphanocylum and Cuthbertsonii hybrid cross. This is doing really well as well. It's starting to lose some of these blooms here, but it's actually opening up another cluster. Oops, see, we just dropped one. See, some of them are starting to go, but it is opening up some more here. And I've got these really awesome, big, bad new growths coming up the back here, so we should have a nice blooming again here from those whenever they do mature. Cutting back a little bit, these dangling little things, that's our Pleurothallus rostritissima, and it is doing awesome. It has tons and tons of blooms just dangling about everywhere. A little bit further back, our Condylago rodrigoi, it's in bloom again. I think we've got 2 blooms on it, and another one coming. The favorite of everybody's here, our Panthes telepogoniflora. It is also in bloom again. It's got 2 flowers open and looking beautiful. The Calodictyon over here, always in bloom. Lots of flowers. I can't even count them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 blooms on. The Panthes uxoria is in bloom again, always. Our Mariposa has some flowers on. If you flip over the leaves here, you see them. They are always in bloom again. Another one. Panthes hexapus, covered in blooms again. Our Panthes helicocephala, always doing what it does best. The Panthes Guatemalensis here is doing really nicely. This thing has been in bloom for months. Once it starts, It's another one that just never stops, and it seems as though the buds form just in time, right before the one before it closes. This one opens, and you often end up with 2 flowers on the same spike open at any given time, which is really, really neat. Love that feature of this plant. Coming back a little bit, this is our Mazdavalia Garciae, and as you can see, it's still doing really, really well. These are the waxier kind of blooms. They tend to last really, really nicely. Let's get a good shot up there. Beautiful blooms, beautiful brownish purple striping inside of the yellow flower, and they are awesome. And it does have a fragrance. I meant to share that with you guys the other day. I noticed a fragrance on these plants. It's kind of a strange flowery kind of smell. It's almost a moldy smell, though. It's not super pleasant. It's somewhere between a cleaner, a floral kind of cleaner scent, and moldy kind of flower smell. Odd, but really unique and really, really awesome. Coming down here a little further, we have got our next bud. Gonna open any time here on our Mazdavalia Exquisita, and this plant is just continuing to impress. It's got 2 flowers open right now. It's got a 3rd and 4th spike. So this plant will have 4 blooms, and I will be over the moon if they all open at the same time. I think that's such a neat idea. So, on to our first bit of really big news. This here is our Mazdavalia Patriciana. And I've given you guys the story of this plant a couple times now. I almost lost this thing. It was down to 2 leaves. All the foliage you see on it except for the 2 leaves that have a little bit of damage. This guy and the one over there are brand new. This thing was down to 2 leaves. It almost died. It has produced a really nice little root system. The moss is established quite nicely, and not only does it have its first flower open here, if you look closely, we've got another spike forming just below that. So we have the potential for another one of these awesome little flowers. It's hard to shoot because it is tiny, and that's my pointer finger. It is a tiny little bloom. Big surprise, I know. But I have some pretty cool pictures. I will throw a few up so you can appreciate this as I get set up to shoot our next and final new bloom. But that is Mazdavalia Patriciana. When I tell you that our final bloom is one of the most special in my entire collection, at least in my opinion, this is it. This is Bulbaphyllum Speciosum, and it is absolutely special. It's beautiful. This is another one of my New Guinea specials, as I like to call them. I absolutely love my orchids from New Guinea. And this is a really, really interesting bulbaphyllum. It likes to grow extremely moist. More moist than a lot of other bulbaphyllums like to grow. Sorry for the shaky camera. It grows really, really moist. I do need to change the moss on this plant. It's been on this mountain for about 2 years, and I only have 1 bloom this year. I did have 2 last year. I'm thinking perhaps the media is starting to degrade a little bit, and this plant could be a little bit happier. It's also got tons and tons of growth. All this growth on this plant is kind of dangling and hanging, and we know that bulbaphyllum orchids don't necessarily like that. So I want to get this plant strapped back down to this mount a little bit better, so we can hopefully see tons and tons more of these awesome bulbaphyllum blooms in the future. I'm going to get this back in the tank here, and you're going to see the view from the outside, and it'll give you an awesome idea of the profile of this orchid. So again, this is our Bulbaphyllum Speciosum back in here. Again, this is how it sits. Normally its back is actually facing us, which is why I had to pull it out. But it has these 3 long dorsal sepals, really minuscule petals on the inside. They're hardly worth noting, but it's got this awesome lip that protrudes out, spotting on it, yellow fades to white, and it is just a gorgeous plant. Even the back of these sepals have patterning And it is just an all-around beautiful, beautiful bloom. This thing stinks. It smells like fish. It's not overpowering. It doesn't overpower the entire tank, thankfully. But if you put your nose right up to that plant and you take a deep smell, then you might regret it. Anyhow, I did notice another bloom in here, but I can't really get to it too well right now, so you're just going to have to trust me. That down there is my Restrepia muscifera. It likes to hide its blooms, but it is there nonetheless. That is my first bloom, I think, on one of my new growths. So that's an exciting moment. But we're still going to back out a little bit, and we'll end the video on this beauty. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I really appreciate each and every one of you. I'm really excited for all these bloom spikes and buds that we have to come, and to share more and more of these awesome plants with you guys. It's looking like it's going to shape up to be a pretty cool spring. I did not go over actually some of the spikes in the tent. I think I'm going to save that for my next video. I totally forgot about them. But we do have a couple of Dracula orchids that are in spike in there that we'll be talking about here soon. Hopefully once the spikes are a little bit more advanced and we can have a better chat about those plants. Anyhow, until next time, thank you guys as always for watching. I do appreciate it. And until next time, happy growing.